Have any attendees? We're opening it. We got 5, 7. All right, cool. All righty. So, hello, good afternoon. This is Al Shebel, and I'm again one of your MCs for the summit. And I want to welcome you to the last session of the day. And thank you for joining us again. Reminding you that this is an hour-long session, and it will be recorded. CE will be automatically applied to your license based on attendance. Remember to put your license number on your profile. If you have any questions, please type them at the bottom of to the right, or where the chat section is, and we will address as many questions as time permits. And so before this session begins, we would like to hear a word from our sponsors for this session. Without them, this meeting would not take place. Let me introduce to you Rusty Lamb with Humana. Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you, Al. It's really great to be a part of this virtual summit. I know we'd all love to be together in person, but it's not happening this year. And I just want to start by saying how important the partnership is with GAHU and the great work that you do, both locally and in Washington, D.C. So really just want to make a few comments about Humana. Humana's really worked really hard to support our beneficiaries and our members during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're also there to support you, our agents. I want to cover just a couple of brief highlights of what's happening in 2021. Humana will be continuing to have a zero plan premium HMO in all metro Atlanta counties, Albany, Athens, Gainesville, Augusta, Columbus, Macon, and surrounding counties. We're also very excited to be expanding our zero plan premium LPPOs. Now will be available almost statewide in 157 out of 159 counties. We're introducing a couple new plans for your beneficiaries in 2021, including a zero plan CSNP LPPO plan for individuals with diabetes, and also a new low-income subsidy design plan for beneficiaries with extra help. Both those plans will be available in 53 counties around the state. We've also enhanced our dual eligible SNP plans and enhanced those significantly for 2021. And we're including a healthy food card on both our HMO DSNP, $50 per month in monthly allowance, which is going to really help beneficiaries deal with food insecurities, and also $25 healthy food card on our LPPO DSNP for 2021. So we've enhanced those plans dramatically and the extra benefits as well. We're expanding our partial dual plan to include the QI category, and we're expanding to 157 out of 159 counties our Part B premium reduction, $50 monthly Part B premium reduction, now available in 157 counties. You know, Humana is really working hard to not only support our agents, but also support our members. Our network continues to be a strong differentiator, both HMO and PPO, and we have strong extra benefits, which make our plans, I think, really sellable for you, the agent. In addition, Humana Pharmacy continues to be a strong differentiator, as well as extra benefits like dental, vision, hearing, over-the-counter, silver sneakers, and transportation. So I know we got a limited amount of time to speak with you, but we do have our virtual exhibition booth. We'll be there tomorrow to answer any questions that you might have about Humana. And I also want to remind you that we're hosting multiple virtual AEP academies, as well as virtual selling enrollment tool training as well. So Al, I'll turn it back over to you, but I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to sponsor and to be a part of your Medicare Summit. So thanks again. I look forward to our speaker, John Greene.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate your sponsoring our association. You've always been you're a perennial sponsor, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The other person, the other company that is sponsoring is Smart Agent, and we could not, I don't know where he is, but anyhow, Smart Agent is a CRM suite of tools built for insurance agents and firms, and the system allows for easily access customer information that includes policy data, Medicare details, and contact info. Make sure you go to their booth during this summit. And without further ado, I want to introduce to you Mr. John Greene. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs at NAHU. Is a very well-connected man in Washington, D.C., and he's going to share it with us, Medicare legislation. So take it away, John. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. So just a little bit more about me. I've been in NEHU for 20 years. Many of you know our CEO, Janet Trautwein, and when she hired me, she talked a lot about Medicare. She said, you gotta love Medicare. And we worked together in lobbying on the MMA, the Medicare Modernization Act, which passed and brought a lot of change to Medicare. And so that's a bit of what I'm going to talk about today. So in some ways, you know, Medicare is still stuck in 1965, but it's really changing a lot. You had traditional Medicare A and B, and you got a Medigap plan. But today there are just so many other options. There's Medicare Advantage Part C, there's a Part D, standalone drug benefit. There are special needs plans. We just heard from your sponsor from Humana, who talked about a whole host of new benefits in their plans. There are a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on in the industry. There are FMOs who play a greater role, I think, in the Medicare Advantage space than ever before in providing back office support and training. And the evolving regulatory changes, you know, this pandemic has really brought about a lot of regulatory changes, and I'm going to talk a bit about those as well. Last year, there was the introduction by CMS of the Medicare Plan Finder, which I will also talk about. And then the Medicare and You Handbook. And I don't know how many of you realize, but NEHU has been evaluating or commenting on the Medicare and You Handbook for many, many, many years. And in this past year, we made a special request that anywhere they mention ships, they would mention agents and brokers. And if you've seen the handbook, you'll note that they did not do that. And so I've started a dialogue with them as to find out how we get that language in the handbook. I'm told that some of this is driven by the Balanced Budget Act of 1997. And I'm looking at the citation, and it talks about stakeholders and dissemination of stakeholder information. And I think that includes agents and brokers. So we have more discussions to have about that, but I just wanted to make you aware that you know, we do provide comments on that. And I am seeking language changes to include agents and brokers. So what's driving all this change? Well, MACRA impacted medical med subs, as you know. There is end-stage renal now will be covered in Medicare Advantage plans next year. There is medical inflation, COVID-19 impacts on face-to-face appointments. I'll talk a bit about that, and how seniors access care and trends in consumer self-enrollment. High cost of prescription drugs, right? That's usually the first thing that you assess is one's drug profile. So relative to the new ESRD on pricing, this was brought about, first of all, by the 21st Century Cures Act that was produced in the Energy and Commerce Committee under the chairmanship of Fred Upton, a good friend of mine. And I've had a number of my FMO friends talk to a lot of the major carriers, and Universally, they are all ready for this. They're all prepared. I think that the biggest question that they have is, and concern is how many of them they will get in their plans. So right now, the maximum out of pocket can increase, but so far we're not seeing large increases. I think that's probably sort of a wait and see on what happens next year. And the funding gap is estimated to be $10,000 to $12,000 annually. So I want to talk to you directly as advisors. Over the years, I've known a lot of agents, Medicare agents. In fact, I've spoken in Georgia before. I wish we were in person today. But I know that you are self-made people, that you're very independent, usually have a lot more experience in this space than the average agent, and that this agent business model has worked pretty well over the years. But you know that things are really rapidly changing, and it's harder and harder to stay abreast of all the changes that are going on. And so I think that's why the FMOs have really filled a special place or niche in providing a lot of that backroom support, keeping you up on the changing regulations and you know, with the scope and all these other things. But here's the thing. If you're not a member of NEHU, you just can't go it alone anymore. And here's why. Neither political party really has your back. There are Democrats who are pushing for a Medicare buy-in or Medicare for all, or some sort of combination thereof. Some Republicans would eliminate first dollar coverage and Medigap and redesign Medicare by combining deductibles into a single deductible. NEIC, who regulates at the state level insurance, would just split the difference. I think that they did some of that when they looked at the med subs. And carriers offer plans for you to sell, and God love them, but they don't represent agent interest. So let me just cover a little ground here about what we have done, because I get that question a lot. Well, what has NEHU done for the agent? We repealed the disenrollment period and restored the open enrollment period. You know, the ACA got rid of the OEP and replaced it with the disenrollment period to allow people in traditional Medicare to disenroll. It took 5 years to get that reinstated, the OEP, and we finally did a few years ago after overcoming some concerns by AARP. But we did it in a bipartisan way. I didn't think it would take 5 years. You know, Republicans didn't want to do anything to, quote, improve the ACA, and Democrats thought the bill was perfect. And so that's why it took so long. If there are any FMOs in the audience, you might be familiar with the 120.4.4. This was part of a marketing guidelines that CMS was promulgating at the beginning of the Trump administration. And you know, one of the nice things about being around as long as I have, I've told you I've been at NAHU 20 years, is that you get to know a lot of staffers. You know, we all came up together about the same time. They were young staffers working for members, and now they're in senior positions in the federal agencies and the White House. And I was able to make a phone call to someone at HHS in the secretary's office when the Trump administration came in and explained what this rule would do to the MA market if it were implemented. And a few weeks later, CMS was directed to drop it. So not everything happens through legislation or even with a lot of fanfare. Sometimes it's just a phone call or, you know, an email to someone where you don't have to, explain who NEHU is. They know who we are, and that's how these things can happen. We have bipartisan legislation to address the COBRA as credible coverage and end the penalty. And it just passed, I think, 10 days ago or so, within the last 2 weeks. It passed through the Energy and Commerce Committee and now is at Ways and Means and the Education and Labor Committee. They also have jurisdiction on this legislation. I think that the Ways and Means Committee is actually going to take a pass on weighing in on the bill. I think they're okay with it. The Education and Labor Committee is going to work this bill. I don't think that there'll be any objections to it. I think it will pass Education and Labor. We have support for this bill in the Senate, though we don't have an actual bill because of COVID. It kind of brought everything to a screeching stop, but Senator Brown of Ohio and Todd Young of Indiana are our champions. Again, bipartisan. I don't think that there's any reason to think that we might not get this done at the end of the year. Because they did pass, tomorrow the Senate's going to vote on the continuing resolution to keep the government funded. It goes through December 11th, which leaves time to do other legislative work. We also have bipartisan legislation to address the observation status. Some of you may have had clients who got stuck in this, what I call purgatory, whereby the doctor who has the power of the pen, the hospital comes behind and changes that status for a 3-day stay requirement for SNF to observation. And this allows the hospital to get some reimbursement rather than none if they are audited. This situation as it is in Congress, they hate it. So you would say to yourself, well, why don't they fix it? Well, because the government's collecting so much money from these audits that it's actually going to cost quite a bit to do it. So this would be another end of the year play to eliminate this or to fix this issue where pay-fors won't be a problem. We are part of a coalition. This is a very bipartisan matter that I think also could get done at the end of the year. We were able to remove rules that CMS would impose on restricting Medicare Advantage and Part D choices for seniors. They were also going to cut your commissions in half, and we stopped that. They withdrew Part D rules and rescinded the Medicare Advantage marketing restrictions on agents. They were going to make things worse. We got them to extend the value-based design for Medicare Advantage, and I think that this is important also for the commercial market in that Medicare Advantage can be sort of a petri dish to try out new ideas and see how things work. And at NEHU, we think that value-based design has a lot of promise, and so it's a good way to kind of test this theory out. As part of the Medicare Modernization Act, they also passed HSAs, the health savings accounts, and we just thought that was a great addition. I call it a little sidecar and the cherry on top of the MMA for these accounts. And we have regular calls with CMS and HHS officials on the Plan Finder. Last year, we had twice weekly calls from August and until near the end of the AEP. I'm guessing that a lot of you don't really know all the resources that we have for Medicare agents. And so I just wanted to cover that for a moment. We have a Medicare web portal on the NEHU website. If you just go to resources and scroll down to the Medicare portal, we have a tab on compliance issues. I mentioned all the compliance regulatory changes because of the pandemic. There have been a lot of changes made in the telehealth space. All those are listed there. There was an SEP for a period of time. All of that is there. We publish quarterly newsletters, which we house back issues there on issues of the day. And we have a Medicare brochure. And this is, I had to squeeze it down in here, but you can see basically what it looks like. It's a downloadable PDF that you can put your own little sticker on it and hand it out to potential clients. It just basically describes Medicare and makes it very clear that they need to talk to a Medicare specialist. It's not their employer plan. We have an FMO council, and there's a tab with all the members of that council and their bios. We have a Medicare Advisory Council, same thing with pictures and bios. In fact, we have some folks from Georgia who are on our advisory council. So we're really the only trade organization representing professional agents and brokers who work with Medicare beneficiaries about Medicare and Medicare products. As I described our efforts on lobbying on Medicare issues in the MMA, this has always been a big thing for Janet Troutwine and NEHU. We have a B2B chat place where agents can talk about various issues. We keep track of all these Medicare summits and support them all. I speak at many of them. So I just wanted to have you know a little bit about what the Medicare Advisory Group is doing and how they work for you. We host monthly calls. When we have our annual fly-in in Washington, D.C., we have a face-to-face meeting with Ways and Means Committee staffers. They produce a Medicare newsletter. In fact, I'm wrapping one up right now. We have developed a Medicare certification course. They provided the content for that. We hear a lot about grumbling about the AHIP test. And in their defense, I'll say this, that when we worked on the big question of the day was, would the government be a good business partner? Because we're introducing private plans in a public program. And this is something that they know nothing about, how private plans operate. And their contracts are really strict. And if they, do something wrong, they can lose that contract. And as you know, that contract is worth a lot. And so to protect themselves, they've created a test that it has a lot of redundancies and so forth in it. But we've decided we would develop our own written by agents for agents. And so I encourage you to take a look at it. We have a lot of regional carriers in particular who have accepted our certification course, and some national carriers. Next year, we expect to add on many, many more. We learned in this first year that they all have different timelines for approving these things. And we had missed some of those timelines this past year, but we're on the docket for next year. We have a Medicare position paper. they've developed, well, they provide a lot of input on legislative and regulatory things. So, for example, when I talked about the credible coverage issue, you know, they looked over the language and helped with that. And of course, the supporting of Medicare summits. So let's talk about the plan finder. And I think in this slide, this will look really familiar to you. It was a real roller coaster last year. And while they've made a lot of improvements for this coming year, there is still much to be done. So here are some of the key issues that we resolved last year. And there were a lot. The total cost calculator, there were a lot of pricing issues. And I just mentioned these two drugs here, Jamulet and this other one here. They are very expensive. And they were showing up on the plan finder as quite inexpensive, which we know is not the case. And so, you know, we identified things that seemed like an anomaly or just out of sync with what we knew about the drugs, and set up a grid and prioritized issues for CMS, and weekly they were literally fixing these as we went through the AEP. In fact, I wonder about beneficiaries who went through the Medicare Plan Finder early when things were grossly incorrect. They fixed the deductible calculation issues. You know, if someone was on LIS, it didn't even account for that properly, and that took quite a while to fix. Navigation issues, you know, lots and lots of problems with the pharmacies networks. I know that when you show a comparison of plans that you'd like to see when a person falls into the gap, at what point would they fall into that gap with a specific plan? It doesn't really show you any of that. Lots of missing details, incorrect maximum out of pocket. That was a huge problem. So some changes for next year that we know. Well, let me start with the one that won't happen next year, and that is the anonymous drug lookup and save. And this is the #1 complaint from last year. I'm sure it will be this year. The good news is that they are going to bring it back for 2021. We put together a working group with CMS. We actually had our first call last week to kind of go through the role of the agent and broker, and how we use the lookup tool and why, and they're trying to also figure out, you know, parameters. So, for example, other stakeholders like a pharmacist might want to be able to look up a beneficiary's drugs, but we don't want them signing up or moving people to another plan, right? Because they're not licensed agents. And so we're just also making sure that there are certain protections for the agent in this regard. They added a Medigap lookup tool. We were really worried about this one, but after reviewing it, it looks like it's just really basic information only. You know, we've convinced them that this varies greatly by state, and that you know, getting too precise in trying to price and compare is not feasible. And they are fixing the drug frequency issues. There are still, I think, probably a few to address, particularly whether it is a semi-annual or an annual injection, or something along those lines. So we know that enrollment will be different this year in the annual enrollment because of COVID. We don't think that you'll be able to do face-to-face this year. And we're particularly concerned about underserved areas and the fact that a lot of them lack technology, such as computers. And so we've asked that they allow people to conduct these your business telephonically. That includes accepting a plan, perhaps using a secret question like you do for Medigap. Since that already exists in nature, it seems logical that CMS adopt that. It's nothing terribly new. We ask that carriers have one or more options for enrollment flexibility due to COVID. And I know that many of them already have planned for that too. We've asked them about using Zoom, for example. There are versions of Zoom that are quite secure, though that's still somewhat of a gray area. And I asked them specifically to suspend the scope of appointment for this year. And they declined to do so, but they did say that they understood that they need to provide some flexibility around collection of the scope and that sort of thing. So the timing and collection, there will be some flexibility around SOAs. So, advocacy is really not free. And, we believe in free markets as you do, but there are legislators, regulators, and other stakeholders who would restrict what you can sell and what you can do. You're a licensed agent recognized by your state as a professional in your field, and you really should belong to a professional organization like NEHU. And so we hope that you will invest in your future and remember that there's strength in numbers because we're stronger together. At the bottom of a slide here is a hyperlink to membership to join. We also are supported by our PAC. Our PAC allows us to meet with members directly and be able to talk about the things that you do and the role that you play. It is probably the third leg in the three-legged stool, if you will. All our sister agents also do the same, and I know that there is a short video clip of HUPAC. I'm not sure when that will be teed up, but I encourage you to consider that as well. And I know that agents always have a lot of questions, and so I'd like to take some right at this time.
Thank you, John. Lots of good information. And I am checking the chat area and I don't see any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Somebody asked if the slide presentation will be made available, and it will be after the summit. So anybody has any questions? I was wondering why I couldn't see it. I just had the little flapper on my camera, and so technical opportunities. Somebody has a hand raised. Hold on. Yes, Keith.
Hey, Al, can you hear me? It's Keith Knabb.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Al, can you hear me? It's Keith Knabb.
Yes, I can
Yeah,
hear.
we can hear you, Keith.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello?
Al, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can. Keep on talking.
Hello, Al, I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yep.
If you look in the chat box, there's questions.
We can hear you.
He says there's questions in the chat box.
Is there?
Al, can you hear me?
No.
Yes, we can hear you, Keith.
We can hear you, Keith. Can you hear? Hello? Hello? Can go ahead and talk. Okay. Deborah, you have a question?
She's muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute her. Sorry, folks.
You know, if you come up with a question later, you can always email me at jgreene@gahu.org. I'd be happy to respond.
So there's a question. It says, it seems that many of the rules that were previously enforced are not being enforced to the same extent today. Do you see this as well?
I do, in terms of marketing. You know, we've all seen the Joe Namath commercial. We have talked to CMS directly. Justin Lubenow and I in February attended a meeting and specifically asked them if they could require that they differentiate between if new to Medicare or existing in Medicare, right? I think that the agent of record has meaning, and I feel that some of it is inappropriate marketing. I have an agent in Florida who is himself a Medicare beneficiary, and he gets marketing calls where they try to switch him to another plan without, you know, and so we're raising these issues with CMS on a case-by-case basis, but I just need some details. I have the right person to talk to. I just need to know, you know, who it is and, you know, a little bit more color around it. And I can take them to CMS because they are willing to put a kibosh on inappropriate or illegal marketing.
Okay. There's another question that says, how long were they going to cut our commissions in half?
So again, this question about would the government be a good business partner? And in terms of commissions, it's really, we don't feel they're placed to dictate what agents ought to make. I think that, you know, CMS is highly siloed. I visualize people sitting in a cube and thinking about a cubicle, thinking about how they can help the beneficiary save some money, and they think about agent commissions. This is a transaction between the carrier and the agent, and I don't think that they need to get involved. I know that the 1/12 first year commission rule is very frustrating. We didn't know that was coming. And I would like to broach that subject with them next year to demonstrate how detrimental it is to any beneficiary who has a late birthday, right? I mean, if you have a December or November birthday and you're going to get it's just as much work to do it in November as it is in January, is my point. And it's not good for the beneficiary. It doesn't really save the beneficiary anything. And you know, I wish they had talked to us and asked us, hey, do you see a problem in the marketplace relative to this? And, you know, we could talk it through, but they just sprung that out there, and that would be something I would like to fix with CMS.
So there was one from another one else. It says, I still see coverage and cost difference on Plan Finder versus the carrier website.
Yes, and that was a lot of how we resolved some of these problems in our weekly calls with CMS. And we know that a lot of agents were not trusting the Plan Finder and then checking on the carrier site. So we have a mailbox called it's Medicare planfinder.org. It's all one word, where you can let us know about these issues as you see them. Include a screenshot and as much detail around it as you can. And the reason for that is that CMS has to be able to replicate the problem in order to fix it. That's what it comes down to. So we will appreciate your feedback again this year on what you find.
Somebody else is asking, so it sounds like the pack for the carriers is getting through. That change just helps to save the insurance company money. I don't know, that was more of a comment, sorry. I'm still looking. We have two ways to look at it, at messages, and so I'm just trying to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a comment that said that the insurance companies love the rule of cutting our pay. So.
Oh, well, I think doing distribution is, you guys play a vital role in that space. But you know why satisfaction is so high in MA is because I think the agent is placing people correctly into the right plan that suits their needs.
Yeah, it seems
if they were dissatisfied because they went to a ship or they just went direct to the carrier and they ended up in a plan that didn't have the right drugs or their doctor in the network, the satisfaction rates would be much lower.
You're right. You're right. Anybody else? Any more questions? This is your chance.
Well, I hope that you'll all take a moment to look at the Medicare portal. Take a look at that. If you're not a member, I encourage you to join. You'll derive a lot of benefit from that. You know, there are local meetings. A lot of chapters always have a Medicare space. I think that group agents can really benefit from your expertise, right? Because that crosswalk between Medicare and employer coverage is really complicated and has a lot of you know, opportunities to make mistakes. And I'm putting that nicely. And you can really help save their bacon by teaming up. They can benefit from teaming up with you so that they don't get into trouble, and it keeps their employer clients happy.
What is the website again? Is it gahu.org?
Yes, it's right here. GAHU.org /membership/join-now.
And how about the Medicare portal?
So you just go to the Medicare NEHU.org and there's a series of tabs up at the top. And I believe one of them is Medicare or is NEHU resources. There's a drop-down menu. There's a long-term care portal. There are other portals. Medicare is one of them.
Okay, cool. Well, if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and adjourn for the day. And thank you again, John, for talking to us and sharing. Anyhow, I was just looking at the chat box again to see if I found anything else. All right. So anyhow, thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
We will start tomorrow promptly at 8 a.m. and we will have more exciting speakers tomorrow morning. So remember to visit our sponsors and just make a connection with them, network with them. You never know what kind of good stuff you can find. So with that, I will end, and y'all have a good evening. Thank you, John, again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.